Hello everybody, Levi Clay, and I'm back again to do another question and answer video. This time I've had a great question from a chap named Charvel Shred on YouTube. So good question, so I thought I would respond to it. Let's take a look at it. It says, I have discovered some great guitar players through your channel, Levi. You introduced me to Scotty Anderson, Michael Lee Firkins, Carver Hyan, and to an extent Frank Gambale, although I already knew who Frank Gambale was and heard much of his music. It's quite funny. I've always been a Shred kind of guy. George Lynch, Warren DeMartini, Eddie Van Halen, Malmsteen, Paul Gilbert, that kind of stuff. But lately I've been drawn to sounds that are more alien to my ears. I was wondering what your thoughts are on Tosin Abasi. I saw Animals as Leaders back in the summer and I was mind blown watching Tosin do the stuff he was doing on a 7-string. I can imagine that's how people felt when they saw Eddie Van Halen for the first time back in the 70s. It's an interesting question, and one that I've been considering myself just recently. First up, I will say awesome that you've been introduced to some great players, Scotty Anderson, Michael Lee Firkins, and the likes of those guys. The beauty of music, at least for me, is that there are so many amazing players out there that play great music, different genres of music, and I love being open to listening to all of them. And Animals as Leaders is no different. So when Animals as Leaders' first album came out, my friend, long-time writing and playing partner, Doug Cartwright, lent me his copy of the album and said, you need to check this out, it's amazing. And I took it home and I listened to it, and it wasn't for me. And part of that, to be fair, was probably the production. Because I had also just recently been given the first Periphery album to check out, and the production on that was so modern and tight. I actually couldn't believe that they were produced by the same person. But there were definitely some ideas on there that I really liked. There was some textural stuff that I thought was very cool and fresh. But there was some playing that I also thought was a little bit rough around the edges. Not that obviously there's nothing wrong with being rough around the edges when you're playing. One of my favourite players is Joe Pass, and he's pretty rough around the edges when he played fast. But to my ears, at least, it was kind of jarring with the overall aesthetic that the music was not necessarily going for, but how I felt when listening to the music. It seemed music that was supposed to be very almost like sci-fi in its image that it would conjure up in my mind. It was very clinical is often used as a negative term, but I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the term clinical. It was progressive, it was precise and clinical, it was futuristic, high tech, all of these words that I can use to describe Animals as Leaders music. And that one element didn't really gel with me. But actually, when the second album came out and the third album, I've only listened to a little bit of the new record, but the second album and third album sounded really good, and I really liked quite a lot of the stuff on there. But I'm not going to sit and pretend that I'm a big Animals Leaders fan. It's not my cup of tea. But I do go out of my way to always listen to lots of music. And there's nothing wrong. I did a video on Tom Quayle not getting Sean Lane. It's okay to not love something. Hating something is a different thing. You should never hate, but you should be allowed to not love. So not my cup of tea, but I definitely appreciate a lot of the stuff that Tosin does on the guitar. As I say, I like a lot of his textural stuff, and he's definitely pushed the capabilities of the slapping technique to places that people had not even considered it would ever go in the 80s and 90s. We listened to Scott Michaux's album Omnidirectional and just couldn't ever conceive of somebody being able to play that stuff better than Scott Michaud was doing it. And I'm not saying that Tosin is doing it better or worse, but he's definitely doing it different, and that's cool, and I've got a lot of time and respect for that. The question that it kind of threw up in my mind, or we should just throw in Tosin plays an 8-string, not a 7-string. The thing that it threw up in my mind, and this is more of a philosophical question, and I can definitely relate to what you're talking about here when you say, I can imagine that's how people felt when they saw Eddie Van Halen for the first time back in the 70s. My philosophical issue now, today, that I'm sort of struggling with is, am I the guy that grew up in the 50s and 60s hearing Eddie Van Halen for the first time and not being able to even comprehend what I'm seeing? And being, for lack of a better description, this is a jazz term, a mouldy fig. Mouldy Figs being the guys that were into all of the swing music in the 20s and 30s, and then the bebop guys came along, and they played the music the way they did because they wanted it to be something that was for the young kids, something that the old guys couldn't do. The Mouldy Figs that would listen to it and say, "Oh, it's not jazz," kind of thing. Am I one of those guys when I listen to new music like this and say, "Yeah, I don't get it"? And I take it to its logical extreme. I called out Amin Safar on one of my vlogs a while back because he entered a competition, and I like to use objectively, and I still kind of stand by objectively, because objective means to be backed up with evidence, not really opinion. The evidence that I understand is that Amin Safar's video was fake. It was faked. And my understanding of that comes from my experience of recording guitar, playing guitar, and also my experience of working with MIDI and things like that. But there are definitely some amazing players out there that I look at now and I go, "Whoa, that can't be real. That has to be fake." And some of these guys, like Jason Richardson, is a really good example. I just can't comprehend how someone can be that good, that fast, that accurate, that articulate. But I know he is, because there are some good videos of him playing, webcam, where it can't really have been faked. So the question you have to ask yourself is, are you becoming that guy that would watch Van Halen and not believe it? And is that a bad thing? I think the answer is probably yes. But we live in a time today where it's so easy to be deceived on the internet. It's so easy to fake something that you have to be wary of stuff like that. You don't want to be, tricked, as it were. I think the thing that I've learned from thinking like this, though, I think the thing that I'm trying to take on board moving forward is that actually I grew up listening to all of the music that you talk about and having these high-level players like Scotty or Gambale, or, even guys like Paul Gilbert was a massive influence on me growing up, and John Petrucci. I have a Dream Theater tattoo. So I hear these guys and what they did, and then I learned to do a lot of it myself, and then I discover players like Rusty Cooley, and you look at that and you're like, whoa, he's pushing the upper levels of what's possible. I can't comprehend it being more than that, anyone ever doing more than that. But now I'm starting to see it, and being open-minded and not being stuck in the past could be something that would be worth considering for anyone watching these videos. Trying not to be the old bitter guy. I think we should celebrate innovation, and I think we should celebrate evolution, even if it means realizing that maybe you aren't going to be the generation that does the evolving. You're not the generation that does the discovering. You're not the generation that pushes boundaries. It's okay when people come in after you. Younger kids are coming out with considerably more boundary pushing things that they're doing. I have a lot of students like this that are really into the gent thing, and I quite like a lot of the gent thing. I really like bands like Monuments and Tesseract. Really, really like bands like that, actually. And I'd never write in that style because it's not me, but I have students that, they've got that style down, and it's just so alien to me. I think it's a time for me to put my hands up and say, I appreciate you guys, and I celebrate it, and I can't wait to see what you guys do with music. And I apologise in advance if I'm ever a bit standoffish, because I don't believe what I'm seeing. And if I accuse you, I apologise. Take it as a compliment, because it means that you're doing something that's so good that I just don't understand it. I can't comprehend it. I refuse to believe what I'm seeing and hearing. And when I put it like that, it's kind of something that I get excited about, hopefully. Anyway, what do you guys think? Do you kind of see where I'm going? What are your thoughts on Tosin Abasi? You can drop me a comment below. You can hit the subscribe button, the like button, and, of course, share the video with your friends. If you want to go one step further, you can support me on Patreon, because this video has been brought to you in part by my generous supporters on Patreon. You can jump on there, link below, and support me for as little as $1. And for that $1, you get access to our private Patreon only Facebook group, where we do lots of transcription challenges and good stuff like that. And if you don't want to do that, you can go one link further down and you'll find a link to my music, the Hellcat Molly albums, and what you'll find there is it's not as boundary pushing as these modern guitar players are, but it's something that I'm still super passionate about, and actually comes from a lot of the influences of the players that you're talking about, Malmsteen and Michael Romeo and that sort of stuff, because that's me, and I'm okay being me. Anyway, peace out guys, it's been my pleasure to hopefully entertain you, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye!